I'm going to use this large wood slice my hubby cut for me and this cute little summer bee napkin that a friend gifted me to make a rustic hanging sign. At first I tried using this stencil painting on these honeycomb signs, and I was planning on putting my napkin on top of that, but then realized I just really didn't like that. So after I tore my napkin apart, the layers apart, and used a little bit of water to tear those edges, I decided that I was going to go ahead and just dry brush on some plaster chalk paint instead. So you can see me doing all that here. Sometimes your first ideas don't always work out, but that doesn't mean that your project can't be salvaged. So once I got that all dry brushed on and made sure it was really dry, I added some Mod Podge to the center, well actually all over the entire piece. That way I could distress easier if I wanted to add some ink. And then I applied my napkin kind of to the center, but a little bit lower to make room for my bow. Sometimes I forget that, but today I didn't. And then used a stiff brush just to tamp that down into all the grooves and crevices of the wood. And then I came back with my mini sander to go around the edges and blending them in. And I think this really just blended really nice to the wood piece and looks like it was just meant to be there. Once that step was pretty dry, I went ahead and added a top layer of Mod Podge to seal that in. And also, like I said before, it makes it easier to distress it when you have a little Mod Podge on there. For this bow, I'm going to use my mini bow dabra, and I tried something new by putting a piece of raffia down to tie my bow up with. I'm going to use some strips of Osnaburg, some bright it's a distressed fabric that I get from Hobby Lobby, but it's a bright yellow to pull out from the bee napkin, and then some cute gray and white plaid. So I've got my neutrals, and then I've got my little pop of color like I like. I tore them into about 1-inch strips, made sure the edges were nice and frayed because that's how I like it. And then I started laying them in X's in my bow dabra. And I just went with the gray first, then the neutral, and then I'm going to add my yellow on top. Once I get that layer done, I'm going to repeat the same thing and add on a second layer. And you can just add as many layers as you want to get your bow the fullness that you want it to be. Then I added a couple neutral pieces on top. I used that raffia string to tie it all up, and I think that worked out really well. It didn't break, and I don't have to work so hard to try to cover it up. Once I get it all tied, I can kind of fluff it, trim the edges to make it all even, and even if I want to fray those ends a little bit more, I can do that here. Before I go too much further, I went ahead and added a jute string for the hanger. It's easier if you can just go ahead and put that on. And then I glued my bow kind of to the top side of my piece to make room so you could see that little interesting notch hole in the wood, and also so it didn't cover up my design too much. And then I'm going to start adding in some greenery pieces. I feel like that just really sets your bow apart if you can get some greenery in there. So first I'm adding a few sprigs of this greenberry bush that I get from Hobby Lobby, just kind of seeing where it looks good in the bow and putting it around evenly. Then I have this sprig of yellow and green flowers from Dollar Tree. I really liked that. I thought the yellow flowers would be a nice touch with my napkin design. I'm adding some of those little fern pieces that were in the sprig, and then I'll add some flowers in around my bow where it looks good. And I kind of just place stuff in, see where I like it, fill in holes, and then glue it in. That's kind of my method. Nothing, it's just kind of random. And here's how we're looking so far. And for my top embellishment, I'm going to stamp these letters on this wooden tag. I'm going to stamp on the words Fresh Honey. I do get these stamps at Dollar General, and I have an extra in my Etsy shop if that's something that you need. I wanted to make sure that my letters were all the way at the end of my tag, so I just started at the end of my word and worked backwards. Once I had them stamped on, I'm going to use some of this distressing ink in the color Vintage Photo and just go around the edges and a little bit in the center just to kind of make it look a little bit older. And if you're new to stamping, don't worry if it's not just perfect. My letters are never perfect. It's almost impossible to get them perfectly straight just by freehanding them. Then I have this little wooden spoon, and I'm going to distress it as well. And yes, I know a little honeycomb stir would have looked really cute here, but I didn't have one, so I just used the spoon. I'm going to use a piece of jute string just to tie that on top, cut those ends, and I just had a little knot there. Then I'm going to glue it onto the top of my bow and put a little dab of glue where I want my spoon to stay. I'm going to add a little bit more greenery and flowers around and this little raffia bow. And then after filming, I did go ahead and throw on a few extra little buttons just to add some more interest and detail to the bow. And you can really just do as little or as much as you want right here. If you like a more simple bow, you can definitely keep it simple. And if you'd like to watch a slower, more detailed tutorial, you can find that replay on my YouTube channel. I hope you like this project and I hope it inspired you to get a little crafty. Have a blessed day.